Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, January 30th, and we have a lot to get through today. We're going to go over the crystal ball in the NFL with a couple of NFL potential quarterback free agents, as well as a question in the NBA. The Wizards have lost 15 straight games. Will they find their way into the win column the rest of the year? NHL power rankings and an update as 4 major players in free agency for the MLB have found new homes. We'll talk about all of that and more. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, January 30th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the first of our 2 QB crystal balls, that being Aaron Rodgers. And he has the most curious situation, the one with probably the most options of all these potential free agent quarterbacks with falling outs this season, this offseason with their team. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is still under contract with the New York Jets, which is a little bit different than some of these other potential guys and potential names in the QB crystal ball here. But Aaron Rodgers has a decision to make. The Jets and him obviously did not go the way that they wanted to last season. They have a miserable season, end up picking in the top 10 now, and he is yet again considering retirement. So that's option number 1 for him, retirement. Now, we've seen a lot of these quarterbacks in the NFL, these veteran quarterbacks, think about retiring this year. We just got news that Matthew Stafford would not be retiring. He was one that had a little bit of headlines following him around that. Joe Flacco is a name that's been tossed around for potential retirement, and now Aaron Rodgers. Where will he go? He might retire. We're going to go off the assumption that he's not going to. Aaron Rodgers, what he was able to do this season, well, it wasn't up to typical Aaron Rodgers standards, was still really good for a lot of quarterbacks. He, if you look at the stats and you look at him blindly, was almost the exact same as Josh Allen. Josh Allen, the MVP candidate. Josh Allen threw 5 less interceptions. Aaron Rodgers threw 100 more yards. If you go off yards, touchdowns, interceptions, their stat lines are nearly identical. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other differences when it goes to playing quarterback, and I'm not out here saying that Aaron Rodgers played as good as Josh Allen did last season, but you have to look at everything. And the fact that he was coming back from an Achilles tear, the fact that he was doing it at 41 years old, and the fact that he got better as the season went on, as he got more comfortable, because something we often forget is the fact that not only was he coming off of this injury, but he did it in an extremely quick timeline, right? It got hurt in week 1 of the season last year, and he was trying to get ready to go and play during the season in his first attempt with the New York Jets. He obviously ended up not doing that because the Jets weren't winning, but he was medically cleared to play. He was put onto the active roster, and this was something that he could have done. And I think that might have hurt his ability in the beginning, right? Because he didn't get that super quick, super efficient kind of healing process that you might expect in any kind of standard Achilles tear, right? So I think that hurt a little bit. But what he was able to do, especially at the end of the season, especially when they were playing better football, when they were in these games, when they were winning some of these games, I think it shows that he's still got a little bit left. Now, he's heading into his age 42 season, coming off of a year with 2,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Stat lines that isn't really that bad. The Jets are considering taking him back. New head coach Aaron Glenn said in his introductory press conference, that's the main question. He addressed it before the media could ask, and he said, we're going through every single position. We have not decided. The owner, Woody Allen, came in, and he said we would be open to having Aaron Rodgers back. Now, of course, some of this is on Aaron Rodgers. He could retire. He could say, hey, I don't want to come back to the Jets. But I think at the end of the day here, Aaron Rodgers most likely will return to the Jets to play out the rest of his contract. He's got 1 year left on his deal, But in the event that the Jets decide to cut him, it's going to hurt them going forward. We got to take a look at cap space here. He's got $49 million of dead cap space hit. Only $14 million of it would be in this season, but next season they would be taking on $35 million of dead cap space if Aaron Rodgers retired or if he walked out the door or if the Jets cut him, right? So that makes financial sense for them to keep him in the building for one more season. It also makes sense as a team building sense, right? There's not a great quarterback out there for Aaron Rodgers to go to. There's not a team that Aaron Rodgers could go to that I think would really fit his timeline, which is basically just 1 year all-in push. The team that fits that the best is the Jets, and I like the hire of Aaron Glenn. I think he's going to get that defense to be able to play the way it was playing last season. Defensive mind over there, and I think it's going to be able to energize the locker room. Now, the question is, can the locker room be re-energized? Because I don't think they like Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers really gets along with them that much, and I think that really hurts. I think that was the big issue of why they failed to be as good as they were supposed to be this season, or at least as good as they could have been on paper. He didn't work out. They didn't work out. So in the event that he does leave, in the event that the Jets do not want him back and they decide, you know what, we're just going to take this dead cap space, this dead cap hit, where does he go? There's a couple of opportunities. There's plenty of quarterback needy teams around the league. We're going to start off with the one that I think might make the most sense financially and for Aaron Rodgers on his timeline, and that's the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans have the number 1 overall pick in the draft, but what they've said is they can't pass up elite, one-of-a-kind talent. That's what the new GM has said with the number 1 overall pick, and with the state of the quarterback class in this year's NFL draft, it makes you think that they're probably not going to be taking a Cam Ward, a Scherzer Sanders, a Jackson Dart at that number 1 overall pick. It makes you think that they're most likely going to be going with like a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter if they think that is truly a generational talent. I think those guys are closer to generational talents than Cam Ward is, than Scherzer Sanders is, than any of the quarterbacks in this class is. So if we're going off what he says, and again, everything is smoke and mirrors when it comes to the NFL draft, the Tennessee Titans might be in the market for a quarterback. I don't think they can really run it back with Will Levis after what happened this season, him being benched multiple times in the season for Mason Rudolph. That's not a good look. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be a long-term option. And the Titans aren't really a team that's looking to compete right now, but if they just need a quick Band-Aid fix to get a little bit of confidence in that building, get a little bit of momentum, I think getting a guy like Aaron Rodgers in the building, a team like the Titans that has a lot of money to play around with, I think that could be the move there. If they don't end up drafting a quarterback, look for the Titans to be an option. Again, overall, I think the Jets are going to keep Aaron Rodgers, but if he goes anywhere else, the Titans are an option. The Browns, if they don't draft a quarterback there, although I do think they will, especially if the Titans are not drafting a quarterback, they get their pick of the litter there, they're probably going to draft one there. I think Aaron Rodgers is an option there, right? The Raiders looking for a new quarterback. They're not in range to draft one of the top quarterbacks. That's a potential landing spot for him. The Giants, if they're deciding that they don't want a quarterback, which I doubt it, they're going to draft a quarterback if one gets there. Maybe they might even reach on a guy like Jackson Dart at that number 3 overall pick. Aaron Rodgers could end up there, but the Steelers are another one that speak to me as a potential one. I know the Steelers have come out and they've said, hey, we're going to either sign Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And we've talked a lot about this Steelers situation. But if Aaron Rodgers comes available for a year, with Mike Tomlin under fire for how he's doing and how this team just continues to be mediocre year in and year out, if you can get a difference maker like an Aaron Rodgers, a guy that has the potential to be a top 5 quarterback in the league, even at his age, I don't know how the Steelers can look at that and pass that up. So if I'm Aaron Rodgers, there are 2 places that I'm targeting, if not the New York Jets. If I'm Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers says, I'm not playing for the New York Jets again, my number 1 option is the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, assuming they don't draft a quarterback, is the place I would go to finish out my career. And my number 2 option, it's those Pittsburgh Steelers. Although that one is a little bit more of a far-off one because I think they're just going to go and run it back with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Where do you think Aaron Rodgers end up? The crystal ball right now is still pointing to the Jets, but there are a couple options out there for him. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the other side of the crystal ball. One more quarterback that I want to take a look at for where he might end up, Sam Darnold. Coming off of his career best year, will Minnesota retain him? If they don't retain him, where will he go as the number one free agent quarterback? We'll talk about that next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, January 30th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the crystal ball of Aaron Rodgers. Where will he end up this offseason? A man with just 1 year left on his contract, entering his age 42 season. In this segment, we finish up our crystal ball. One more quarterback to take a look. Sam Darnold. The top prize in many people's eyes of the free agency market. Sam Darnold is coming off his best season in his career, coming off of a Pro Bowl nod, although that is starting to mean less and less. Sam Darnold, where will he end up? We'll consult the crystal ball in a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, January 30th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our next crystal ball victim, that being Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold. What does the crystal ball say about him? Well, it's the same quarterback-needy teams that we just went over for Aaron Rodgers, but the difference here is Sam Darnold is a free agent. Aaron Rodgers, coming off of a year, he still has 1 year left on his deal. Sam Darnold is a true free agent. He signed a 1 year kind of bridge deal with the Minnesota Vikings as they drafted their future quarterback, what they hope is their franchise guy in J.J. McCarthy. He was a guy that was supposed to serve as a backup or a mentor, or just as a lead-in, kind of like Jacoby Brissett did to Drake May. J.J. McCarthy goes down for the year with an injury in the preseason. And now Sam Darnold has the opportunity to play with the most talented roster he's ever had, the most talented roster he's ever had in the NFL, and he delivers. Sam Darnold leads the Vikings to a 14-3 record, the 5 seed in the NFC. He throws for 4,319 yards, 35 touchdowns to just 12 interceptions. But the season has a little bit of a sour taste to it, because despite of all the success that Sam Darnold had, despite everything that went so well for the Vikings, the offense, the defense, everything in between, the last 2 times we saw him perform was maybe his worst games of his career. Now, that's a bold claim there, but at least all season, in 2 playoff and pseudo-playoff games, a game that could have given them the first overall seed in the NFC, tied for the best record in all of football with the Kansas City Chiefs, a game where they took on a division foe in the Lions. He just didn't show up in Week 18. They didn't get the bye, and then they had to face the Rams in Week in the wild card week. They go out there, they take on the Rams, and it just does not go the way that they wanted it to. Sam Darnold gets sacked 9 times in that game. Some of it on him, some of it on the play design, some of it on the receivers, some of it on the offensive line, but still a awful performance from him the last 2 times we saw him out. And honestly, those performances probably lost him anywhere from $15 to $20 million a year, which is crazy to think about. But Sam Darnold was being talked about as getting a $50 million contract before those last 2 games of the season. We were talking about him being all the way back, the Minnesota Vikings potentially seeing him and saying they can't let an asset like that walk. J.J. McCarthy might have been drafted in the top 10, but they can't let a guy like Sam Darnold walk, leading them to potentially to the number 1 seed in the NFC. What he's done this season, they can't let him walk. And then he throws up a couple stinkers in a row in the 2 biggest games of the Vikings season. And now things are looking a little different. It's seeming from Kevin O'Connell's statements after that wild card game, where he basically said, "We appreciate everything that Sam Darnold has done for us. It sounds like he's not coming back." Now, people have theorized that potentially they give him a franchise tag. He comes back on a franchise tag, a 1-year deal to either serve as a backup or a, hey, you get used to the offense, you can replace us later. Kind of like he was supposed to come in and do this year for J.J. McCarthy. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see the Vikings deciding, hey, Sam Darnold is a resource that we can't give up, especially how it went last season. So he, in my opinion, will hit that free agency market. And here in the crystal ball, there is a couple teams that I think would be really interested in him. Again, there's one of those 3 teams at the top of the draft. The Giants, the Browns, or the Titans will not get a quarterback most likely. Now, there's been some buzz around Jackson Dart. I don't think he goes top 3, though. I think Jackson Dart is a name that could very easily find his way into the first round, especially after that Senior Bowl performance that he's been putting on in those Senior Bowl practices. But if we're looking at a place for him to go, Sam Darnold going to one of those first 3 teams, either the Titans, the Browns, or the Giants, whichever one decides not to draft a quarterback, that is something I think is a real possibility. Outside of that, the Raiders, I think, are the team that we might look at to spend a lot of money on a quarterback. Lots of rumors of a reunion with Russell Wilson to the Raiders. That one seems like it could happen if the Steelers decide not to bring him back. But if the Steelers do decide to bring him back, and he's going to be a starter over there, Sam Darnold is the belle of the ball. He's that number 1 free agent quarterback. He's the guy that every team with quarterback needy might go out and get. And I think the Raiders are going to be the one that's going to spend the most money on him. I don't think the Steelers are going to go out and get him because they said they'd sign one of those 2 already, either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. And whichever one they get, I don't think Sam Darnold is a huge upgrade over them. But the one that I think the one that I think makes the most sense to me, and we're going to do a top 3 here, the one that makes the 3rd most amount of sense to me, actually, is one that you might not think. I think the Colts is the 3rd place team for me. Now, I don't think the Colts are going to go out there and spend $1 bajillion on him. I don't think the Colts are going to go out there and put all of the money into this guy because they have Anthony Richardson. But if he decides that, hey, he doesn't need to be a starter, if you go pay me $20 million a year, I'll go be a backup. Maybe the Colts are a spot that he could go to. I'm not sure how certain it is, and that's a spot that I think a backup could end up taking that job because the Colts seem less and less certain with Anthony Richardson every single year, every single play, every single season he goes out there. They seem a little less certain about that number 4 overall draft pick spent on him. Not without reason. He hasn't put up great numbers, but he also has barely played a full season. He was basically a rookie, and I think they need to give him a little bit more time. Number 2 here, it's going to be the New York Giants. The New York Giants here, I think, just make a lot of sense for Sam Darnold. They return to New York, although I don't think it would be very dominant. The Giants are a team that's going to be looking for a 1-year bridge quarterback. Maybe Sam Darnold is not looking for that. Maybe he's looking for a multi-year deal. The Giants could give him a 2-year deal, and I think that would be fine if he's okay with the understanding that the Giants either this year or next year are going to draft a quarterback. They're going to have a guy that the goal is to replace him. And I think that's something that could very well happen. But the number 1 option out there, it's got to be the Browns, right? The Browns have had so many quarterback issues. The Browns have had so many quarterback issues, and I don't think they're falling in love with any of these quarterback prospects. I don't think any of these quarterback prospects are falling in love with the Browns either. They might spend it on fixing one of their many holes on that roster that they have. But the Cleveland Browns go out there. They get Sam Darnold for, again, a bridge deal. No one is signing Sam Darnold to a $50 million a year contract. No one is signing him to be their next franchise guy, but to be a bridge guy in any of those top three spots. I think that's something that could work very well for him. I think the Browns, with the talent that they have, the offensive line that they have, and the defense that they have, could be successful with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a guy that isn't necessarily going to elevate your players. He's not a guy that's going to come out there and say, you know what, we are going to win more games because of me. But if he's playing his best, he's just not making mistakes like we saw with the Vikings, and he's using his talent to the best of their ability, which is fine. That's good enough sometimes. The game managers like that are solid football players, and I think that's something that the Browns could use. But I think the Raiders or the Browns are those top two options for Sam Darnold. I think at the end of the day, whichever one of those is going to dish out the most amount of money, the Raiders most likely dish out that money. If they don't get Russell Wilson, that is. But I think the Raiders and the Browns are the two teams I'm looking at for Sam Darnold to find his new home. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, though. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we step away from the NFL. The NBA is in full swing. The All-Star game is right around the corner, as is the trade deadline. But I want to talk about one of those teams that's not going to have much in either of those spots. The Washington Wizards. They've lost 15 straight games. We're going to talk about their schedule, see if they'll break the record, and see if they have a chance to win another game, potentially all season. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, January 30th. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the crystal ball for two quarterbacks that are or potentially might be free agents this season in Sam Darnold and Aaron Rodgers. In this segment, we turn our attention over to the NBA. The Washington Wizards, the worst team in basketball by a pretty large margin, fighting for potentially infamy as the worst team in the history of the sport. They've done it again. Their second losing streak of 15 straight games in just this season happened earlier, where they lost 16 straight games, and we asked the question again, will they break the record that the Pistons tied last year? And if not, when will they win a game? That's coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, January 30th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our NBA talk here for the day. The Washington Wizards have not won a game in 15 straight contests. Their second time doing that this season. Like I said, the first time happening between November and December, where they tied the franchise record the Wizards' franchise record for losses in a row at 16. They have a game coming up against the Lakers. Without Anthony Davis, I still think they lose that game pretty handily, right? That is one where they probably tie that franchise record yet again. But the Wizards have never crossed that mark in their history. The all-time mark, as we all learned last season, is 28, right? The Detroit Pistons end up tying that. But this is the second time the Wizards have been on the path to tying or breaking that record that was set just last year. And if you look at their schedule, there is a real chance that they get it done. Now, there are a couple question marks as we go through it, but we'll start off game by game, right? To tie their franchise record, they get the Lakers. And that one, we're pretty comfortable counting that as a loss, right? After the Lakers, they comes up with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the last time the Timberwolves played the Wizards, it was a close game until Anthony Edwards showed up in that fourth quarter, ends up dropping over 40 points in that game, and they run away with it at the end. That looks like a new franchise record for losses at 17. First time in 3 tries that they've crossed that mark, but then this is when it gets a little more questioning, right? The Charlotte Hornets are up next on their schedule at game number 18 for them in a row, and so far in their losing streak, in their year this season, the Wizards have won 6 games. 2 of them against the Hawks. 2 of them are also against the Hornets. The Hornets snapped that losing streak last time they played at 16, and the Hornets have lost both games that they've played against the Wizards this season. They're 0-2 against them. The Hornets go into this game now without Brandon Miller, who's been amazing this year. They come into this game without LaMelo Ball, most likely. He's going to get reevaluated, but I doubt that he will be able to go. That is 2 of your top stars missing against a Wizards team that could catch a lucky break or 2 potentially. We're going to count that one as probably even a win for them, but we'll just say for the sake of the argument here, we'll just say for the funs and games that the Hornets find a way to beat the Wizards here, and the losing streak continues. That's now 18 straight losses. The next one up is against the Nets, and this is a Nets team that is actively tanking, right? They're trying to lose games, but I still think this Nets team is better than this Wizards team by a pretty good margin. Their defense is much better, and I just think they'll find a way to win this one. That gets you to 19 games. Then a stretch here where they're probably going to lose each of these pretty easy. They get the Cavs to get to 20. Then the Hawks to get to 21, although the Hawks have lost to them twice. The Spurs with Wemby to get to 22. The Pacers should take care of business to 23. The Bucks and Giannis should wreck house against them to 24. The Magic at 25, that's an interesting one due to injuries, but I still think they'll be able to keep pace. They should still be able to win that game pretty easily to 26, and then you get the Nets again. You get the Nets one more time this season. Again, they haven't played each other yet, but the Nets, I think, is a potential win right there. I don't think they get it done against the Nets again, and that gets you to 26 losses in a row. Again, as long as they get past the Hornets at number 18, you get to 26 pretty easily, at least to 25. The Trailblazers and the Hornets follow, so that's a little stretch there. The Nets, the Blazers, and the Hornets for 25, for 26, 27, and 28 to tie the record. That is where we're really going to target a loss here. That's where we're really going to target a win. We're looking at 3 teams at the bottom of the league. In our tiers we did yesterday, all of those are in that tanking tier that we finished talking about. That is one that's one where I think they'll get a win at. But if they're able to get past that, if they are able to keep this streak going, even past all of those teams that are bad. The Wizards have only won 6 games this season, so it's not unthinkable that they would get past that little stretch of games. They finish up to break the record against the Miami Heat. Finish up against the Miami Heat, and I think at that point, it's just over, right? That's 29 games. You can keep this going, right? We can keep it going into March to see if they ever win another game. The Jazz are after that, then the Raptors twice, and I think at that point we have to give them a win. But I think there's a real shot at this. There's only 4 or 5 games in this stretch that I think the Wizards even have a shot at winning. And we look at how they're playing right now, they're getting absolutely destroyed by those Lakers, even without Anthony Davis. They're currently losing 78-46 as we talk, and it's just after halftime here. This game, this is a Wizards team that is competing for maybe the worst team in the history of the NBA. We take a look at where they stand. Maybe they can find a way to get there. They're doing a little bit better than the Pistons were last year, but that's because they are not going through that stretch right now. But we'll see. I think they at least break the franchise record, get to minimum 17 straight losses, and I don't think they end up breaking that record. But there's a real shot over here for this Wizards team to live in infamy, do something that gets your name in the history books this season, the most losses in a row in the history of the NBA. But let me know what you thought. Do you think the Wizards get it done? Do you think they beat the Hornets? Do you think they beat the Nets? Do you think they beat the Blazers? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the ice. Ice hockey continues to go when we have our NHL power rankings as we do every single Thursday. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, January 30th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the Wizards' upcoming schedule. They've lost 15 straight games. Will they ever win again? We don't know about that. But in this segment, we're going to go over the NHL Power Rankings. 32-1 coming up in just a second. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, January 30th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our fourth segment of the day, that being the NHL Power Rankings. 32-1, starting off at the very bottom of the league. And it's the San Jose Sharks. Back in a very familiar position for them. The Sharks have been near the bottom of the league for a very long time. Ever since their core kind of walked away. They got old, they retired, went to different teams. The San Jose Sharks have been near the bottom of the league, and they're going to stay there for a while. They have a couple of guys that I think could turn into something. Macklin Celebrini is a really exciting rookie, potentially going to win the Rookie of the Year over there in the NHL. But he's a guy that isn't enough on his own. And it's a very similar thing for our number 31 team here, that is the Chicago Blackhawks. Right? They have a guy. They have a guy in Connor Bedard, but Connor Bedard on his own is not enough, especially with them trading away one of their other top players, right? This is a team that is just going to continue to dwell in the basement. They've got to get a couple of good guys in to help Connor Bedard, who's been amazing this season. At number 30, we got the Buffalo Sabres. They went on a crazy losing streak earlier this season. They've been hot and cold all season long, but they're just not going to break that playoff stretch, that playoff losing streak that they have yet to break, the longest in professional American sports right now. Huge loss for them. They're here at number 30. At number 29, we have the Penguins. A big fall off for them. They almost made a playoff push last year. They've still got Sidney Crosby, who continues to dominate. But he's not enough, right? This is a team that's really struggled with goaltending this season. They haven't had all of their guys completely healthy. They're going to be sellers at the deadline. It doesn't seem like they're going to be able to make a comeback into relevancy like they were able to do at the end of last year. At number 28, we've got the Seattle Kraken. They found a way into the playoffs in their second year of being a franchise, but ever since then, they haven't been able to replicate that success. They've been fine, they've been okay, but this is a Kraken team that just is not cutting it as far as playoff chances as the picture starts to clear up a little bit. 27, we've got the Ducks. You've got a couple of young talents, as always, with this Ducks team, but the rest of this team hasn't been able to put it together yet. This is a Ducks team that I really do want to see succeed because you see a lot of guys, a lot of young guys that have a lot of potential, a lot of talent, and guys that have been there for a very long time. But at the end of the day, this Ducks team just is not good enough. The brand new franchise at 26 is the Utah Hockey Club. The Utah Hockey Club looking to get a new name, and that's maybe the most exciting thing that's been going on with them this season. They've been kind of a middling team. They started off a little hot, won their first game of the season, and then after that, they've been just kind of okay. Not really what you wanted, but they are coming from an Arizona Coyotes team that just was not very good. So I don't know what we expected out of them. Still, an exciting first year over there in Utah. At number 25, we've got the Philadelphia Flyers. They've really fallen off a bit. This team was making a big push at the beginning of last year, but at the end of the day, they end up falling off. This is a Flyers team that is just not very good. The Preds have made a huge jump since the beginning of this season. They're all the way up to number 24. They've been one of the hotter teams in the league, but still, they've dug themselves quite a hole to start the season. It's going to be hard to dig themselves out. At 23, we have the Canucks. This is a hot and cold Canucks team. Right now, they're going through a little bit of a cold stretch here. They just won a game against the Predators, but again, it's not saying much, even though the Predators have been hot lately. 22, we have the St. Louis Blues. They went through some tragedies earlier this season, but the Blues, again, probably not going to make a big run. The Bruins at 21 have fallen off a bit, although they are getting a little bit better. Obviously, they're one of those blue blood teams of the 2000s, 2010s, and this is the first year we've really seen cracks in their armor. I think getting rid of Linus Ullmark really hurt that team. At the end of the day, having the best goalie tandem in the NHL really does help. But still, this team has a lot of talent, and I'm not ready to count them out yet. At 20, we have the Islanders. 5 straight wins for them is very impressive. I thought they were dead in the water, but coming back, 5 straight wins, they've still got a bit of a playoff chance alive, so we will see what goes on as the season continues. At number 19, we've got the Flames. Again, this Flame team's just been a little disappointing. They've got the offense to go through with it. They've got some of the goaltending over there, but this team just is not consistent enough. They're just kind of in the middle. The Rangers at 18, getting near these playoff teams, just haven't really lived up to everything we expected them to, right? They make a deep playoff run last year with maybe one of the best goaltenders in all of hockey, Igor Shesterkin, but this Rangers team just is not cutting it right now. And getting into the top half of the league, we have the Kings. They've turned it up a little bit all this season. They get Drew Doughty back. It didn't help last night out when they took on the Panthers in Florida, the defending Stanley Cup champions. But the Kings, I think, are going to make a push for the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to be able to get that first playoff win, the first playoff round win that they've been searching for a while. The Senators at 15, again, another one of those hot and cold teams. Right now, they're neck and neck with the Washington Capitals as we speak, but this is a Senators team that I really do like the talent they have on it. They're riding the wave. I like the offense. They've been one of those surprise teams for me. The Canadiens, all the way up to number 13. They've been kind of, again, hot and cold, riding the wave a little bit, but overall a positive season. They're trying to claw all the way back from just a couple seasons ago when they were able to make the Stanley Cup playoffs, although you don't have Carey Price anymore. So that's most likely not in the cards. The Devils at number 12 here. The Devils are a team that I loved heading into the season. I really still do like this team, but they haven't lived up to all the expectations. I have Jacob Markstrom has been good, but he hasn't been the best, and he's dealing with a little bit of injuries right now. So we'll see if he can get back on the ice and get this Devils team back to where they need to be. This Lightning team at number 11 has been amazing. Just outside the top 10, we've seen returns of a lot of their great guys. Now, they did end up losing their captain at the beginning of the season to free agency, but they've been able to move on like it doesn't matter at all. This is an extremely talented Lightning team, still near the end of a dynastic run that they had, making it to 3 straight Stanley Cups, which is incredibly tough to do. Trying to have the Panthers copy that. Getting into the top 10, though, we have the Colorado Avalanche. A trade for them that I didn't think was going to work out immediately, but the addition of Martin Necas over there has been amazing, right? His addition to this Avalanche squad has been an instant plus to that offense, even after losing Rantanen, who I didn't think they'd be able to replace so easily and so thoroughly. The Avalanche here at number 10. At number 9, we have the Panthers. The Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions. They go out there, and they're one of those teams that can be really hot or cold any night out there. But that offense is scary. Sergei Bobrovsky can shut you down on any night, and this team is looking like a threat to potentially get back to their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final. The Maple Leafs at 8, always dangerous in the regular season. We just need to see if they can have that playoff success, and I'm still not convinced that it's going to happen this year. The Wild at number 7 have started to fall off a little bit. Losing Kirill Kaprizov again to injury is not a good sign, but the goaltending over there has been amazing, and as long as the offensive production can keep up and they can survive these next couple of weeks without Kaprizov, this team will be good. Golden Knights at 6, they just keep winning hockey games, right? They are not dealing with those crazy long-term IR loopholes. They've still got plenty of injuries on their squad, but Mark Stone is healthy, and it's showing a huge difference for this Vegas team. Getting into the top 5, though, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. I love that move, trading for Rantanen, getting Taylor Hall, getting lots of elite talent on your squad. They have one of the best mix in all of hockey on goaltending, on offense, and on defense, and they're going to be really tough to compete with as the season goes on. At 4, we have the Dallas Stars. I love Jake Ottinger. He's one of my favorite goalies. That offense needs to step up just a little bit, although they've been playing a lot better as of late. The Oilers at 3, whenever you have Connor McDavid, whenever you have Leon Draisaitl, who's playing like an MVP player right now, the guy who's most likely going to win the Hart Trophy right now, this is an Oilers team that's incredibly dangerous, and they're looking to avenge what happened in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. The Jets at 2, they've got a Vezina caliber goalie, and really that's a minimum of what it takes to be a really good team in the NHL. They've also got the offense to pair with it. After an historically great start, they've kind of calmed down just a little bit, but still, this Jets team is everything you want it and more. And at number 1, that leaves the Washington Capitals. The Capitals are coming out here as the surprise team of the season. Alex Ovechkin is chasing Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal record. This is insane. You have Logan Thompson, who they've just freshly given a 6-year contract extension to, playing like a Vezina goaltender right now, and this team seems like they just can't lose whatever they do. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your top 10, your top 5 here. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we get into free agency. The MLB has 4 major players being signed. We'll talk about where they ended up, if it's a good move for them, and how it makes each of those teams better. We'll be right back. You're on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, January 30th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the NHL power rankings for this week. In this segment, we turn our attention to the MLB. Free agency continues to heat up as pitchers and catchers report in just about 2 weeks. We're going to talk about the 4 major players that have signed contracts over the last couple of days. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, January 30th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our 5th and final segment of the day, that being the MLB free agency updates. 4 major players have found their way onto new teams, and we're going to start off in the bullpen, where 2 new arms have found their way to different places. Carlos Estevez has found his way after being traded from the Angels to the Phillies last season as a free agent. He was the one that ended up giving up the home run to Francisco Lindor that ended their season, but he has found his way on to the Kansas City Royals. Kansas City Royals at a great end of bullpen arm. He's not going to be the best closer in all of baseball, but they don't need him to be. The Royals already have a really great closer in Urseg over there. Getting those 2 as an 8th, 9th setup and closer role, switch them off depending on who has the hot hand, is an incredible start for a team that already has a really good pitching staff. Getting that back end bullpen when you have starters that have the ability to go 7 innings if need be is exactly what this Royals team needs. They got it for relatively cheap as well. 2 years, $22 million with a 3rd year potential option. $13 million on that option, a $2 million buyout from the team if they decide not to take that 3rd year option. He had a 2.54 ERA and 20 saves over the course of last season and was an essential part of getting the Phillies into the playoffs, where they ended up not making that big run that they expected, but still was an essential part to that back end of a Phillies bullpen that was a little depleted after some of the moves they made. The other big bullpen arm that got moved at the deadline was not at the deadline. The other big bullpen arm that got signed recently was Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates is coming off one of his best seasons of his career, a 1.45 ERA, a 1.17 ERA and a 145 batting average against, coming off of a year with the Texas Rangers where he made an all-MLB squad. He was selected to an all-star game. 35% strikeout rate. 35.9% strikeout rate. He signs a 1-year, $13 million deal with who else but the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers have a stacked bullpen. Not only do they have Kirby Yates, but they also have Tanner Scott, who they signed in the offseason after the Padres gave up so much to keep him there. Along with him, they've got Kopech and Moore and Blake Trinan as well. This is a bullpen that is stacked just as much as everything else this team has, and that is just unfair. You add Kirby Yates to the back end of that bullpen, this Dodgers team is more stacked than I ever thought it could be, and every time they sign someone, I'm surprised where they get this money from, but still, that's an excellent signing for the Dodgers. Again, adding some back-end help to the bullpen, you can never have enough. You never know what injuries might occur, especially with pitchers these days, with how much the injuries in the arms have been going up. Speaking of these pitchers, there was a starter signed. Max Scherzer has found a new home. He was one of the top starters left on the market. Max Scherzer coming off of a year where he was injured himself for quite a while after coming to the Texas Rangers. Only played 9 games last season, but in those 9 games, 3.95 ERA, 2-4 record in just 43 innings pitched. Again, he was injured for a lot of this season, so we're going to put this one as a watch, but he is a first ballot Hall of Famer, a champion, and he signs a 1-year, $15.5 million deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, as we've talked about, have been in with just about every major free agent, and they've started to land a couple now. They add Scherzer to a rotation that is looking like one of the best in baseball. doesn't have a lot of those super high-end arms. But if you can get prime Scherzer for at least some of those starts, you've still got Gosman, you've still got Berrios, you've still got Bassett, and potentially Alek Manoah if he can come up and get back to his form when he was competing for Cy Youngs with the Toronto Blue Jays not too long ago. That is a deadly five-arm duo. That's a deadly five-arm rotation, right? That's exactly what the Toronto Blue Jays need. They've built their team around defense, around pitching, and they just need to get a few more bats. After adding Anthony Santander, building a deadly pitching rotation like that is exactly what this team needs. And the final big name that was signed is Ha-Seong Kim. Ha-Seong Kim was a shortstop utility guy for the Padres last season. The Padres have a lot of guys that can play shortstop, a lot of guys that can play that role, and Ha-Seong Kim is dealing with a shoulder injury, so he's not going to be able to play at the beginning of the season. But what Kim is going to be able to do at 2 years and $29 million, making him the highest paid player on the Rays. When he comes back to play shortstop, he adds a Gold Glove level defender. He's a guy who's won a Gold Glove before, has a 242, 326, 380 triple slash. His ability to produce on offense, he's got a little bit of pop as well, but most importantly, his defense at a position where they've really been struggling since they lost a very talented player to some unfortunate off-the-field issues. This is a team that desperately needed a shortstop, and bringing in Ha-Seong Kim, he is now the highest-paid player on that Rays team. That Rays team is always good. They've got all the guys, especially in the pitching, but getting a Gold Glove defender and a guy that can rake a little bit in the middle of the lineup is extremely important as they head into next year, after last year was very disappointing for the Rays. But let me know what you think. Where do you think some of the other major free agents end up? Where do you think Alex Bregman ends up? What do you think about these signings for all four of these guys? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back tomorrow talking about all things from around the world of sports, including the all-star reserves that were announced in the NBA today, snubs, who made it, and more. That'll be tomorrow. Can't wait to see you then. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.